internet. That's right. That's us. No, it's we are changing formats, meaning we are moving to different kind of technologies, and there's still some initial startup challenges. Well, which we will overcome. What is life without a little bit of a challenge? But hey, this is Listener Funded Radio. It's been around for a long time now. Dave and I have been here for a long time as well, so that's awesome. And if you can, please donate because it's worthwhile. There's a lot of stuff out there that is leading you along the primrose path. This, how do you make the decision as to what is right or what is wrong? We won't give you opinions necessarily. When we do, we will tell you, but we will tell you what happened. Right? So that's our job here. So if you like that, please support the station. Any kind of donation is good. Crypto, cash, whatever you want to send. Gold, silver, diamonds. That'd be good. But yeah, if you could do that, it'd be awesome. Today is the 12th of June, 2025, and it's my daughter's birthday as well. So happy birthday, Cassidy. Love you lots. She's just eating her cake downstairs now. You can catch the cave on the air, online all the time, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. And your smart device is going to be smarter than you pretty soon. Even your toaster is going to be smarter than you. That's right. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But you know what? The archives are free. What that means is you can go into the station's website, revolution.radio, pretty easy to find, and just listen to all the content that is there to your heart's content. Completely free. Another good reason to donate, of course. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast. And for Dave,
it's the Dark and Jung.
Thank you, sir. For myself, of course, the Dark people, and we like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. There's this huge misconception that all Aboriginals, Dave, in Australia are the same. Not true. Not true. Think of Australia like you would think of Asia, or in fact Europe, Africa, or even the native peoples of North America. Mm-hmm. Very different peoples. There's a common thread, don't get me wrong, but the languages are different stories. And there were 6 distinct migrations into Australia, we're told by science, over the last 50,000 years. And they all brought with them their own traditions, genetic materials, and so forth. So it's not a homogeneous Aboriginal culture, right? People make that mistake. It's not true. It is old, right? But there are distinct differences between different Aboriginal nations, let's call them, because that's the right way to put this. Now, we've had a week. I just want to put something in perspective for everybody. The riots in LA, and I looked at the map. I wanted to know, because I'm curious, right? The riots in LA are confined to what you would probably call 8 to 10 city blocks, if that. 8 to 10 city blocks. In perspective,
pretty much CBD.
Yeah, that's it. But in fact, probably smaller then, right? Because there were shots of LA at the same time as there are the riots going on, because these web cameras everywhere, right? So I looked at them. In Hollywood, on Sunset Boulevard, etc., but especially in Hollywood, near the Chinese Theater, I think it's called.
Yep, used to be.
They're having a premiere for the new Disney sci-fi movie, the animation. So that was like all decked out for that, and most of LA had no idea that the riots were going on. Right? There were 5 cars that were put on fire. All the Vimo, the self-driving cars, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the funny thing is this, in the interest of fairness, because I've listened to all the coverage from every source, including Fox, it's really interesting how much it diverges and how many things are left out by certain people. Like, you know what, this is left out here, this is left out there. So a few clarifications. So the riot... I wouldn't call the riot. It's the same, in the same way that I wouldn't have called the Redfern riots a few years ago. Remember this, Dave? They said they had Redfern riots in Sydney. Mm-hmm. It's like 50 First Nations people or so, maybe 100 in the street, half-heartedly, not even fighting with police, but some kind of protest. They weren't riots. These aren't really riots either. There was looting, yes. There was some property damage. There were hundreds of arrests now, but that's mainly due to the curfews that were instituted. Now, the important thing here is this. And I looked at the footage, and I looked at the interview with the chief of police. Now, what the Trump administration said is that the chief of police welcomed and, in fact, asked for the help. Not true. The chief of police said that they were following their protocols, using LAPD and then outlying sheriff departments and so on and so forth. But they had it under control. They didn't ask for the National Guard, and they didn't ask for the Marines. Donald Trump sent those in off his own bat. And just to be clear, so that's the chief of police didn't say that. But I think we've made it was a storm in a teacup, Dave. It was a storm in a teacup, which I hope it's not going to escalate, right? Because there's no need for it to escalate.
Well,
and it was really
it's
triggered
in other places now.
Now, because what ICE has been doing, the immigration department, they have been targeting regular folks, if you will, right? They've been targeting them in schools, they've been targeting them in daycare centers, they've been targeting them in places of work, which is really funny in many ways because a lot of places of work were shutting down, right? Now, interestingly enough, and this is important to understand, I didn't realize just what happened, but like I said before, California is the fourth largest economy in the world. US, China, Germany, California by itself. It used to be that Japan was on top of California, but no longer. Now California has got a bigger economy. If California so decided, because Donald Trump said, or some people, not Donald Trump, sorry, but some Republicans said, we don't need California. No, you do. You do need California. It's got a huge GDP. But I can see now with what's going on that secession may be on the cards, right? Because these are fundamental questions. These questions now are almost as pertinent, Dave, as slavery was in the 1850s and 1860s in America. Because this is a fairly large group of people living in America illegally, fair enough, but not breaking any laws, paying taxes, and just trying to live a life. They just didn't get there the legal way, right? And then fair enough, that's a problem, I guess. But they haven't done anything wrong. In fact, they have contributed to society. And the Californians and some others are making the point, well, just let them be. Let them be. I mean, we actually need them for the economy, right? And criminals, yeah, get them out. Violent offenders, get them out. Gang members, get them out. Absolutely, right? But the vast majority of these immigrants, illegal immigrants, immigrants in general, they just want to make a life for themselves and their family. They're hard workers. And the economy, especially in California, you notice, Dave, you've lived there, depends on them. Right? I mean, when you lived there, Dave, who worked in the kitchen?
And who did the gardens everywhere? In the wealthy area that I lived in, there were always a truck, like a two-ton, not like a troop carrier, but equivalent in size, filled with people that their origin would have been from Mexico, and they would go from house to house doing gardens. They had a list of clients. They would do them. All the gardens were beautiful, to be honest, where I lived. So, it is an economy to itself. Meki, I'm agreeing with you on this. It definitely is an economy to itself. Yes, the kitchens, yeah, motor mechanics, or auto shops, as you call it. All of those were, heavily biased towards having Mexican origins. First or even second, third generation. People have lived there for a long time. I do want to just reiterate that you said, law-abiding citizens who are still undocumented, or maybe they have paid taxes. Who knows? They still are breaking a federal law, like if you were to overstay a visa. But there should have been, at some point in the previous 4 years, if they wanted any of those persons to stay, then there should have been an amnesty to say, if you've been in the country for, and just have an arbitrary amount of years, 10 years or so or greater, and you've had a job for that amount of time or whatever, then just simply apply and you'll get citizenship. There should be an amnesty before
I agree.
deportation. There should be.
Yeah.
And I'm not siding with anybody. I'm just saying, well, if you've been a part of the economy, then why would you want those people to go? That's my question. And look, it's a valid question. I've got a map up of the streets, and for those people who are listening on the radio, let's call it South Broadway. This is the perimeter. South Broadway, West 2nd Street. I can't read that street, but we could say from Commercial Street, East Commercial Street, down to or across to East Caesar, East Chavez Avenue, across the freeway. That's the bordering of, if you don't know downtown LA, that's what it is. So it's kind of sad that, like I mentioned on Tuesday, it's sad that there's the stacks on people who,
yes, I agree.
If there is a peaceful protest, you get all these extra groups coming in because they want the part of it. They want to do it. So people who love burning cars, people who like to
burning car time.
Yeah, they happen. So there's people who loot shops and are aggressive, and then you've got the poor patrons that live there or have to cross through these communities to get to where they need to go. Meckie's anonymous now for some reason. There you go. That's better. So
you don't know who I am.
No, I don't know who you are. Who is that guy? Is this across the line? So, with any peaceful protest, they can get out of control because these other groups want to muscle in on your activity. For the people who were in support of those who were from Mexico, having the flag and being interviewed, I think the wrong answer that they were giving, that I saw at least, was they're in support of the people from Mexico, and Mexico laws should be instituted in California. There was a whole bunch of terrible interviews.
No.
Terrible interviews. But they chose to put those to air. I watched when a group of maybe 100 and 150 people stormed onto the freeway through broken chain link fences, and that's really bad. Like, if you're going to have it, if you keep doing these kind of protests, eventually you'll end up like Australia, where you have to submit your protest plan that's going to start at this time, at this location, walk this path through the city or wherever to this destination where you're going to congregate as a group. You're going to have a stage, a temporary stage set up, and you're going to have speakers. It could be the mayor or the leader of some organization in support of you. You invite the TV cameras to march with you, right? All those things. That's what we have to do here, and you need to get a permit. And when you've submitted this, if the police go no, then it's illegal if you do it, and you can be arrested. What they try and do here is to ensure that two conflicting groups don't get too close to each other, that they know it's all going to be planned, that they know that everything's predictable. No one wants chaos where everything's unpredictable. So
I think that's incorrect. I'll tell you what I mean, though.
Go on. Your time starts now.
Okay, so I do believe, to be honest with you, and this is coming from what I've seen in the past, so you can only judge the future by what's happening now and what you've observed in the past. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark, right? So I've observed Donald Trump wanting chaos. He encouraged, and you can twist it any which way you want, but he didn't encourage January 6th by saying the election is stolen. It's not, this is not fair. We should get the Mike Pence out here, string him up, whatever, right? So, but essentially, he was very upset that he didn't get elected, and he says it was stolen. So he disrespected the process. Whether it was stolen or not is irrelevant. There's a proper way to do it, which we saw with Al Gore and Bush. Al Gore says, no, that's nonsense. It never happened. So he went to the courts, and the courts decided, George Bush got it. Now, of course, there was a foregone conclusion because of the judges in the Supreme Court, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is this: there's a right way and a wrong way, and Donald Trump chose the wrong way. But he actually has said that he wants to use the military for these things, right? And he has deliberately, whitewashed the military to a large extent now. He has largely taken all the old heads of the military out, all women, all persons of color have gone, and he has replaced them with people that he can trust. And this is the funny thing here. This is important to understand. And this is my main beef that I have with Donald Trump as president. In America, right? My understanding was always you have an allegiance to the Constitution, to the idea of America, to the ideal of America, not to a person, right? You don't swear allegiance to Donald Trump. If you live in North Korea, you swear allegiance to the Kim family, okay? That's what you do. If you live in Iran, the Ayatollahs want your allegiance, right? But if you live in America, you have an allegiance to the Constitution. That's it. That's it. And he is ready, and he said this in no uncertain terms. He said it that he wants to get rid of the Constitution. Donald Trump, that is. So I honestly think he would love for things to get worse, for the Marines to actually go and kill somebody, God forbid, and then have a real riot, remember Rodney King? Now that was bad back in the 90s. That was bad. George Floyd was pretty bad, but Rodney King, that was a riot, right? And they got the troops in at that point, but the governor asked for it. So I think Donald Trump loves chaos and he encourages chaos, and LA is not burning to the ground. Okay, it just isn't. But if you put more National Guard and more Marines in there, it just might. Because that gives Donald Trump an excuse to invoke martial law, potentially. And if there are more protests across all the cities, and he knew this would happen, because if you only deport criminals, everybody's on board. All the gang members go, all the criminals go, violent offenders, murderers, rapists, you name it. If you deport those, everybody's on board. Nobody would say no. Right? Now you can argue about due process all you like, but nobody would fundamentally oppose that. Where you find opposition growing is when you take people out of the community that are part of the community. Now in Germany in 1938, and I'm making the comparison to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, there was something called Reichskristallnacht. It was the night of shattered glass. What they did is the Nazis ferried around their rioters, if you will, from town to town to destroy Jewish shops, smashing their windows. That's why it was called Crystal Night. They smashed all the windows in the Jewish shops, but they didn't do it in their own city. They took Nazis from Hamburg and drove them to Cologne, and from Cologne to Bonn or whatever, right? And because they didn't know them, they're not part of the community. They're not part of their community. Because they don't have to walk down the street the next day and buy, I don't know, bread or cheese from the person whose windows they've just smashed. That was very, from a psychological point of view, it was very smart. And this is similar as well. Like a lot of people, the National Guard maybe it's not so, but certainly the Marines, they're not really probably from the area. They could be, but they're Marines, so that's their allegiance now. It's to the Marine Corps. But my point is this: you put people like that out into the world, and you that have no allegiance to the community, they can do whatever they like. Similar with ICE. But the problem here is from the flip side. You're taking people outside the community, right? And you start deporting them like fathers, mothers, whatever the case may be, hardworking, this or that. Again, taxpayers, they haven't done anything wrong. There's no illegal activity, no criminal activity. They're just part of the community. They're not there as full citizens, but they pay their taxes and they do whatever they need to do. You take those people out, then the community will band together and say, hey, these are our friends, these are our colleagues, these are our workers, these are my neighbors, whatever the case may be, right? And you take those people in, you will, and Donald Trump and the administration knew this. They can't say they couldn't imagine this. This is what happened. When you go, this is what happens every time when you go into a community and you take away members of the community. There's a backlash, an uprising, a protest in support of those members of the community, because that's what they are. Yes, you're illegal, but you've lived there 30, 40 years. Are you really illegal? Well, legally, yes, but you are an integral part of the community. And it's this backlash, I think, that the administration was hoping for so they could deploy troops. So you see, the thing is, none of this is just some brain fart. These things are planned through. Okay, it's not just Donald Trump who has these ideas. There are many people behind Donald Trump that want to do certain things, right? And whenever you see him signing these executive orders, he asks them, "Oh, what's this one? Oh, what's that one? What's this one?" He doesn't know. He has no clue, right? He's a bit like Biden. In fact, he fell down the stairs on the plane, just like Biden the other day. But he's getting on too. He's almost 80, Donald Trump, right? So I know it's just how it is. But my point is, if you start attacking the community will fight back, Dave. That's why I said I don't think there won't be any backlash, right?
Originally, it was the worst first. Now, I'm sure they haven't gotten all of the worst out first yet. So if they just stick to the plan, yeah, I think it could have been better. I wanted to say this thing, Meki, I've got on screen. The Middle East on brink as US evacuates embassy staff over Iran nuclear threat. This is the US embassy in Iran.
I saw that. Yeah.
And it's one of those, if they evacuate the embassy, it's a beginning. And I know Iran was always it was the last country, Meki, wasn't it? Of the 4 countries in 5 years plan.
Well, Syria is done.
Like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Iran is the last one.
It is the last one. And so, yeah, Syria is kind of done. So they've got the plan to move on to Iran next. And this one is, for me, I think one of the things that we've talked about for a long time, and it's usually the scariest one when we get to this one, given where we're at with the nuclear conflict and the never closer, Meki, to the doomsday clock, which I've got an image for. So we are the closest to midnight since 1947 right now, and it does scare me somewhat. But you know what? I'm gonna go straight to Kash Patel. I'm sorry, Meki, but
no, that's great.
Because I watched the video today of Joe Rogan with Kash Patel on. Now, my first thoughts were, oh, fantastic. We get some insider news. Probably not. I'm kidding myself. He's going to tell us things that he's been approved to say. Well, he said nothing, and I think he knows nothing. And if he doesn't know nothing, then he's bought or owned or told not to say anything or told not to investigate anything, because the guy that was all argument is suddenly towing the line. And I'll explain what I mean. So when he was asked about the Epstein files, he said, yeah, I looked at the file, there was nothing to it. Yeah, but did you investigate? Says Joe. No. Well, I'm going to investigate it, but there's nothing in the file. And then he said, well, did he kill himself? And he said, yeah, a lot of people kill themselves in jail. Really nothing to it. And then he says, I saw the footage. No one came in or out of the jail cell. End of story. Hang on a minute. But as Meki and I remember, there was news stories all over, everywhere, announcing the accidental deletion of these security tapes. Joe Rogan then pressed him on it and said, well, it's a little weird that the security guards were asleep and there's no footage at all. And he's in a anti-suicide cell on suicide watch and there's no footage. And he goes, yeah, case closed, right? Yeah. So I saw the footage. That was his response. What footage? You couldn't have seen it. You said that was all deleted. And yeah,
just snow. He saw the snow.
He's shh, and they're here. Okay, so the funny thing next was, because you know who that was. She just died the other day too, by the way. That lady.
Yes, she did. Suicide.
So
I'm serious.
yeah, I know. So the next thing was about the island, all the tapes, who has the tapes, when are we going to see the tapes? And yet again, he kind of clammed up and stopped talking about it. He said it's, the tapes are just Epstein with people, with, children or whatever. And no one wants to see that. Now they did a cross to Pam Bondi talking about 10,000 of these tapes, and the FBI is going through it. At some point, there'll be a release. We won't show you the tapes, but we'll tell you what was on them. Blah blah blah, because it's horrific. Blah blah blah. Didn't mention another soul. Didn't mention anyone who was on those tapes. Didn't mention the flight list. Didn't mention anything. I'm saying bought and sold. Done.
100%.
We're never going to see anything ever. It's never going to come out. And if I'm wrong, I'll buy you a coffee, Mackie.
Thank you, sir. Now, I want to say here that this is a bipartisan. Actually, no. It's actually an issue that transcends party politics. It's got nothing to do with Republican, nothing to do with Democrats. This has to do with rich, powerful people that took advantage of a service or services that were offered by Mr. Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple, right? And you could be a celebrity. But the key thing for Epstein was, though, you had to be rich, famous, powerful, and you had to be someone that could be compromised. I think that was his game. He was doing it for Mossad, I'm sure. And recently, I've come to believe that he was also doing it for the KGB or the FSB now, whatever they're called.
Yep.
And I do believe that Putin has the information. That's why they suicided him. He didn't. There was no window handy. There's no. Because if there had been a window, then we would know for sure, Dave. We would know for sure.
Typical.
Having said that, having said that, the bone that he broke in his neck, and I looked at this, he can't break in the way that they said. You can't break it yourself, but you could break it falling out of a window. So somehow he did manage to fall out of a window in his cell. Right? Which is funny. Kinda. Too soon? I don't know. But
all I have in my head is Homer at the Twin Towers before they were destroyed. Calculash. Calculash. So terrible. Can I have some water? Only crab juice. Like, give me another one. So this is the reason why my brain segues like this is because where we heard prior to their appointment that they're going to release everything, it's going to be transparent and everything's going to be fantastic, gets into power, gone. That's it. Silent, not talking about everything, nothing to see here, move along. So it's clear, like I'm standing on my board and owned, buy you a coffee if I'm wrong, that this whole thing is going to be a big whitewash. You're not going to see anything. And all of those people who are in the footage, all those people who are already bought and owned, who, as you said, utilize the services, whether it's FBI, maybe it's multiple services, KGB. I saw one of their vans that said floor and window cleaning.
We will close your windows for safety reasons. Yeah, sure.
So floor and window cleaning.
Floor polish, extra slippery.
I would love to
it's
do.
just a joke.
I would love to do an AI joke about that, where you see the machine. It's got the rotational thing, and so do with headphones on, like in True Lies. Remember cleaning the floors?
Yep.
But he's got KGB. That looks like his initials, but it's not. And then just before he leaves, he walks around the bit that he's just polished and opens the window and leaves.
Yumi, yes, Boris, it's the slippery enough yet. Yes, Yumi, oh good.
So he drops to test it. I think this would be funny. He drops something on the floor and it immediately flies out the window. Yeah. Wow. Slippery. Yeah. I'm sorry we're making these jokes, and I know it's a very serious topic. But
no, you have to. Because we would be curling up in a fetal position if we didn't.
100%. And look, if I just want more, I want to see more and more evidence this way that this is what it's happening. Because we saw, the American government's going to release all this footage, when UFOs are going to be a big release. And yeah, we saw these little tiny ones. I don't know. Grains of sand meant nothing to anybody. They released some documentation that said there's other. They created a new group called Other. And then they appointed complete pork chops with zero jurisdiction to only look at brand new things and nothing historical. And when they gave their Senate discussion with a slide deck that had nothing in it except for things that were clearly a bird, migrating geese, an inversion, right? And it was nothing. They go, there's no evidence anywhere we could find. Did you look? Well, this slide deck we have, it's the same as Patel.
There's looking, right? We looked over here, not over there, but we did look here a lot. Okay.
we're gonna do things. We're gonna do things, and yeah. So look, it was such a. I'm gonna use a friend of mine's comment. Wet sock. The UFO release was a wet sock. The Epstein files is a wet sock. JFK was a wet sock. They didn't release anything new. They still haven't. And I'm going to say, Meki, once again, it's going to cost me another coffee. But by the end of the presidency, if we're not in World War III or clutching onto what is left of what we can scoop together to survive on, and there's no more internet, the whole planet's destroyed, I'll make you a coffee with whatever I can find left. All right? Because that's what I... So I've heard so many times, Meki, other people, not just us, other people saying that this is such a pretend democracy. Eva, what's that lady, the Dutch lady, the blonde one? She's... Oh,
the Dutch lady. Now sit down.
What?
You're funny.
What?
The lady in the place at the time there.
On the video, giving the speech.
I got nothing.
I sent it to you. Sure you did, Dave. Yeah, that thing. So she was taught. She has a bit of history to be a bit of an agitator, and I like what she says. She happened to echo all of our words back at me again, and I think she's a bit too prickly to have on our show, but it's still, if she'd ever answer my emails and I'm not registered as a stalker, that'd be great. Right?
There's one thing though. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, like a couple of our other guests, a lot of them have passed away. So it would be wrong.
That's nothing to do with the show.
Nothing.
No, you're telling the story wrong, Dave. They didn't pass away because they were on the show.
Not because they were on the show.
Well, that's what it sounded like. Come on to the show. Here's your suicide booth. Come on. Yeah.
It's only a nickel.
Do it.
It's only a nickel.
Live dangerously. Eat the fugu. Come on, John Platos Cave. Just do it.
Hang on. Poison fish. Tasty fish.
No, but
there's a map to the hospital on the back of the menu. Yeah.
Woo, lucky. There's a couple of things though we know as a certainty now though, and this is what they are. Issues like JFK, UFO disclosure, the Epstein saga, let's call it. They are all beyond any party politics. They're beyond any political consideration. They're beyond any establishment considerations. They are global in reach, in my opinion. The way they're suppressed is universal and almost infallible. Things are leaking here and there, but most of the links, this is why I've lost trust in most of the people coming forward with this kind of disclosure, because if there really were whistleblowers, because we've seen what happens to whistleblowers. We've seen what happens. Look at Assange. He wasn't even a whistleblower. He just published it. But we know what happens to real whistleblowers. Real whistleblowers are destroyed in every feasible way. That's what happens. So if these guys coming forward, the ex-military guys, etc., not saying that they didn't do what they said they did. What I'm saying is what they're releasing to us as information was vetted and approved. Okay. In fact, Alondro, what's his name? Alessandro, whatever. the head of ATIP.
Louis Alessandro,
that's it. Yeah. He actually said there are certain things I can't talk about because of my NDAs, right. etc. Right?
Exactly.
A sworn oath.
Which I respect.
So we know. Yeah, but we know there are certain things he won't tell us. But I also believe that in some of the things he's telling us is complete nonsense, and not just him, but others as well.
Oh yeah, totally.
So we know. So we know for a fact, and if anybody had hoped that Donald Trump was any different, I mean, you have to ask yourself the question: why would he be different? Right? Okay, he's not a Washington insider. Okay, that's actually a tick. Yeah, that's good. That's good. He has never been in politics. That's good. I mean, before his first term, I mean. He doesn't have any allegiances to Washington. That's good. But other than that, he's just another guy. And he's a rich...
With approved speeches. They're all approved. Yeah. They're not saying anything...
He's a rich...
Yeah.
No. But he was always rich. His father was rich. He was rich. And he went bankrupt. Well, his companies went bankrupt many times. He actually bankrupted the casino. How that's possible, I still don't understand, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is this. He was always part of the power establishment. By power establishment, I mean the parasites that don't really contribute to society, right? And it's funny enough, I watched Tupac. No, not Tupac. It wasn't Tupac. I lied to you. I can't remember. It was a rapper in 92. And he said, what Dave and I have been saying for many years now as well, that we no longer can afford billionaires as a society. But the truth is this. These issues that we are waiting for to be disclosed to us will never be disclosed to us in full truth because it is not convenient for the parasites. Both the visible parasites and the invisible parasites. We talked about this. The visible parasites are like a red herring. You know, the Donald Trumps, even the Rothschilds, even all of these people, they're just a red herring. The actual parasites, the actual people in charge, you wouldn't even know who they are. I don't know who they are, but I do know they exist because they leave a fingerprint. Ever so faint, but the fingerprint is there. You can see it in certain things. I'll give you a hint. Look at the architecture that's prevailing in our society. Okay? And there's a couple other things that give it away as well.
Are you
but
strands
we will never get this. We will never ever get what we need from the people that come from the power structure. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. If you haven't seen it, you must. That was when Hollywood had, I guess, courage, right? Because that movie, amongst others, It's a Wonderful Life is another one. It shows you exactly how the system works, to a T. And Mr. Smith, played by Jimmy Stewart, goes to Washington and filibusters and gets his point across, etc., and actually makes a change, which is great, right? But it's a movie. But it shows you how the system works. We knew how the system worked back in the 40s and 30s, right? Nothing has changed. It got worse. But it takes a person like Mr. Smith, the fictional Mr. Smith, to go ahead and change the system if it were possible, right? You have to take someone that is not connected to any power structure and who is willing to put everything on the line. But he needs to be supported by people around that person, him or her, or they, whatever, that are willing to work with that person. And it needs the support of the majority of the population. That's the truth. There's a great movie called Bug's Life. And I watched it with my kids recently. That's why I'm thinking of it. There's a scene in there where the grasshoppers are gathering in a sombrero in Mexico, right. Drinking and such, and there's this huge bottle of grain, right? Which they open up and then one or two comes out. So the chief grasshopper is talking to his people, and his people go, "What do we care what these ants do? Let's stay here. We don't care about the ants. They're just ants. Who cares?" And the chief of the bandits, he says, "Okay, so the ants don't matter. They're only small." And his people go, "Yeah, they're small. Who cares?" Okay, so he opens the bottle, and a piece of grain pops out and hits one of his fellow grasshoppers in the chest. Did that hurt? Yeah, it didn't hurt. I don't care. So he pops another one out, hits another grasshopper. Did that one hurt? No, it didn't hurt at all. And then another grain comes out, hits another one. How about that one? Nah, we're too tough. Then he opens the whole thing up and all of the grain pours out. Buries these 3 grasshoppers he's talking to. The other grasshoppers are a bit further back. And they all go, take a step back in shock because they're completely buried, maybe even killed by this avalanche of grains. This is not about the food. This is not about a single ant. The ants outnumber us 100 to 1. If they ever realized that, if they ever realized the power they had, we would be finished. That's what the lesson is. The lesson is not about a specific thing. It's about control and maintaining control. And that is something we have to overcome. We have to overcome the control structures, which is getting harder and harder because they're getting us younger and younger. And they're putting us into these silos, mental silos, ingeniously. Right? They're creating a generation of people with no social skills. They're creating distance in families. They're creating artificial social distancing. We are being taken into little isolation pods, each one of us, just like in the Matrix, right? Yes, it's not physically real. Up here it's real, in your head. You're separated, you're segregated, you're siloed. That's the danger, Dave. And that's the problem that we're facing. We need someone that is not part of the control structure to be in charge and have the support of all of the people, or a majority of the people, right? That's what we're up against. I'm exhausted.
I do agree. So I'm glad we're keeping it to 90 seconds. So what's her name? Ava. I can't even pronounce her name. Vladingerbroek. Ava.
That sounds right.
Vladingerbroek. She was at CPAC in Hungary just recently, and she was the one who was speaking those same words as we've spoken for a long time. But then she's kind of like a blonde agitator, and I don't want to align with the amount of agitation she has. We're more informational, so just putting it out there. Now I've got a lot of Europe news, and in basically the Danish Mercury paper, and
I like it. Nice.
It's mercur.de, and it's talking about their Hochvogel mountain. It has now split in two at the peak.
Wow.
And there's something like 400 million cubic meters of material, because it's 2 kilometers tall, that it's going to split and fill the valley up, just like Blatten.
Oh, wow.
That no one cares about. I'm with was it Ilke, the lady that I sent you a video. You pronounced the name correctly, because I'm terrible at it.
Elke, yep.
Elke. Yeah, she has been warning of.
Okay.
Sure. Shout out to her. Mispronounced name. Thank you very much. She's been telling everyone of the Swiss Alps and all of these different things that are occurring. The thing that seemed to be the cause of Blatten, say all the experts, was that the permafrost in the mountain that was keeping everything together was slowly thawed, and then it failed. That makes sense. This one doesn't.
We talked about that. We
did.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't have any permafrost whatsoever in it. It's just a well-hiked mountain with a cross at the top, and the almost 50% of the top. It's more like 2/5 and 3/5. 3/5 are going to stay there. The rest of it's got 2 kilometers to the valley floor. It's really going to be terrible. They've set up all seismic stuff there now, and they can measure whether it's moved a millimeter or not. And I've lost Meki. Yeah, I've lost Meki, but that doesn't matter. I've only got 15 minutes left anyway, so. Now I wanted to talk about some immigration. Now, there was a news story getting around. I noticed it first. And Meki's almost back. Trust me. He's almost back. Put your video on and we should be sweet. Here it comes. So, I saw it. There was on X and on YouTube, there was a news story about immigration in Canada. And I wanted people to understand the truth of what they were seeing, because it was saying, you know, are you aware that Canada is taking in 800,000 in the first 4 months of 2025? 800,000 immigrants. And I went, wow, that's a big number. Surely that can't be true. And yeah, it's true. It's true. But I've got one graph there, and this graph it plots out to 2041 about what their expected immigration is going to be. That's great. That's really good. I appreciate it. And what number of the population that is going to equate to. So in 2041, they're talking about an entire, almost a third of the population is going to be immigrants. That's a lot. And in Canada, right? But what I found was, they're talking about the viral chart showing steep rise in Canadian. This is a MSN debunking story saying it uses false and misleading numbers, and then you've got to pay. It's got a paywall on it. So what I've done is I've gone and grabbed that, and I've got a chart up which you can see only when you're watching this video, and you can see there's 3 different metrics on this graph. This is not the one that they're debunking. What this is to December 2024, immigration, emigration, and net migration. And the net migration is just above 800,000. They had 1.8 million or nearly 2 million persons immigrating towards December 2024. But they also emigrated just less than, let's say 700,000 for numbers' sake. So on the graph, the difference between that is the net migration rate, because there was more people migrating than immigrating. And immigrating means leaving the country. So yes, it's valid. These numbers are valid. These are from, the source was the Canadian Statistics Estimate blah 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 migration quarterly from the government's website. So that's valid. And it's just like Snopes, Meki. Just like Snopes, how it would more likely debunk a word in the phrase rather than the data. Do you remember seeing so many of those stories?
You got to focus on what you can talk against. That's what you got to focus on.
Yeah. So if there was a point saying 1 + 1 = 2, or I think 1 + 1 = 2, they debunk it saying he only thought it. They wouldn't say, well, 2 is wrong, or 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. They would just say, well, he said he thought about it, but you know, did he really? So yeah, that really disappoints me, Meki. And so when I'm talking about, I find something and I try and delve into what is real and what is not real about it, and then I determine what was the original message of it if they're trying to debunk it or trying to make someone aware of these enormous numbers that was immigrating into Canada. And I think about, well, if the message is to try and diffuse the situation, no, it seems like it's trying to make you aware that these numbers are hideously large, and they are. But all around the world, we've seen the same thing. In Australia, we've seen the most amount per year of immigrants coming into this country. And it's never going to get any smaller unless we close the border to everybody, which is never going to happen. You know, it's the same kind of thing, Meki, as we see as gas. So we're exporting gas now for free, apparently. more gas
Yeah, that's right.
than all the population is using at a really high cost, where they could have sold it to them and made more money on it and given it to us for free. Could have done that, and they'd still be in profit, but they didn't. And they're just selling us down the river for what looks like just appeasement of these large companies to keep those contracts alive. It's really disgusting. And given that we are already a carbon sink, because you can't count recyclable carbon emissions in your carbon budget. You can't. You can only count net new carbon. And so net new carbon is gas you're taking out of the ground. But we don't need to take carbon out of the ground. We can make CH4 at home with solar panels and some stuff you can buy at Walmart. You can do it net zero. And you can keep burning the same carbon over and over again in the form of natural gas or CH4. And there's no dramas. We could all be doing it. In fact, all of our power in our country could be just, collected carbon and hydrogen and converted into CH4 and burned again as non-net new. It's not net new.
Yeah. This is the problem, right? I mean, the problem ultimately is to get to the bottom of the truth. What is the truth? What is a fact? Because a fact is something that is a fact irrespective of who says it, where it comes from, or how you arrive at it. It's a fact. And the problem that we have in Australia, but all over the world, the wrong people are in charge of managing what has become our lives, right?
Yes.
We're being completely mismanaged. And this is true because the people that are in charge, funnily enough, never answer a real question. Listen to any interview with any politician, in power, not in power. There's a few exceptions, of course, but the vast majority, and not politicians only, could be CEOs, anyone in power, they will never answer the question. They will always tell you whatever they want to tell you. They will make a point, irrespective of what question you might have asked, what question was asked of them, what the context is. It doesn't matter. They will always make the point they want to make, or the points they want to make, without giving you anything that you would like to know.
I think Mackie, the real question here, the question we all want answered is it time for thick shake in a bowl? That's my example.
Yeah.
And you hear them say that. They'll be asked a direct question, which if they answered it correctly, would do them in to be out of their job. They should get voted out immediately, deposed. Yeah, but they won't. They won't answer the question. They go, I think the real question here is something else. Why is that color of your tie?
No, but I like thick shake in a bowl because that is it's pertinent.
It's great.
No, but it's completely nonsensical, which is exactly what the answers are that you get. Mm-hmm. I've been listening to a lot of stuff, not just American stuff, but elsewhere. When you've got question time in Parliament, things like that. There's never an answer. There's never. You know why? Because there's nothing more. This is career politicians now specifically. There's nothing more terrifying to a career politician than telling someone the truth and then getting hung with it.
That's right.
Nothing more terrifying, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you tell the truth, that's it. You cannot run away from it. You can't obscure it. You can't obfuscate it. You can't twist it. You can't spin it. You've said it now. You've said it. There it is. I've seen a few real moments with politicians over my 50-odd years of life where I go, what he said, or she, that was real, Dave. That was a real person speaking. It's a real human being.
On one hand.
Yes, I can. Now, I had a very interesting experience. This was probably, I want to say 10, 12 years ago. I was interviewing for jobs. And for architect jobs, I had a person come in and sit for the interview. And we talked. And about 2 or 3 minutes into it, he goes, wow. I said, oh, what? You're a real person. Yes. Because clearly his experience had been corporate drones that read off a script have I don't work that way, right? I mean, if you know me, then I probably say too much sometimes, but I don't. And to him, it was such I could see the real surprise in his face. It was hilarious. It's like, you're a real person. I thought about that, and I've thinking about that ever since. And then I think about all the times I've come across situations like that, where you feel like, yeah, this is not really a person-to-person conversation. I could be talking to a wall. I could be reading whatever the person is saying off a script. It makes no difference because there's no human interaction, right? And again,
I've seen deer in
the parasites, right?
Yeah,
exactly. But that's what the parasites want. They want to break the human connection between all of us, right? And isolation is a good way to do it. Virtual or physical or otherwise, by dehumanizing us, both ourselves and others. And because when was the last time anybody really thought about changing the system? I mean, really changing the system, right? Not in the West. I'm talking about the West. In other countries, there have been revolutions, absolutely. Sometimes with a good outcome, most of the time with a bad outcome. But you look at the French Revolution, you look at the American War of Independence. You even look at the peasant revolts in Germany in the Middle Ages. I guess.
I think we're at the break.
Maybe. Oh, it's coming. Yeah, but you look at they're very few and far between. Those real moments of change in our societies, right?
Look,
if we are running out of,
it's got to be the end. So do like, share, and subscribe.
Well, he said, please do. This has been Platos Cave. We hope you liked it. Please don't go anywhere. Something else is going to come that's going to be awesome, of course. And as Dave said, do like, subscribe, share if you can. Sharing is great, of course. And most of all, though,
be safe.